Pilates is rapidly becoming one of the most popular exercise systems for strength and flexibility. It is popular with Olympic athletes from all disciplines. Many riders either attend the classes or do the exercises at home. But what actually is Pilates? It's a system of exercises developed by a German gentleman, Joseph Pilates. Joseph was very unhealthy as a child, but was inspired by images of the Greek gods. He wanted a body like them, so he studied fitness and anatomy in great detail and went on to become a boxer, circus performer and gymnast. He called his work contrology. It was only later that it was named Pilates. Joseph realised to be fit and strong, you need to have well-toned internal, abdominal and back muscles. When these are doing their job, they support the spine, improve posture and stability, and enable the body to move freely and efficiently. Joseph's original students and his wife all developed his exercises in their own way, which is why there are so many different forms and why Pilates is so infinitely adaptable. Anyone of any age or stage can do Pilates. You don't have to be particularly fit or agile to start. People who do Pilates report that they feel stronger, taller and leaner, and find it easier to move with grace and ease. This is great news if you're a rider or a horse. So what about horses? It's just as important for them to have a strong core. More so, in fact, they have to carry a heavy weight on their backs. Understanding the principles of human Pilates in its many and varied forms and applying the relevant aspects of Joseph's principles to the horse has so many benefits. Developing and maintaining stability, posture and balance will definitely contribute to a more effective training, will improve performance and can reduce the risk of injury. The German scales of training form a good basis and are a helpful and effective guide for the training and welfare of any horse, whatever the discipline. The scales of training are not intended to be a rigid format, more a guide to achieving a good and correct way of going. To do this, the horse requires balance, coordination, security, strength, core control, and good posture. These are all important principles shared with Pilates. So what exactly is posture? What do we mean by it? It's how we or our horses hold our bodies. Good posture can be defined by grace, ease, fluidity of movement, comfort and suppleness. The body is balanced and requires little muscular effort to maintain it. Poor posture is when the body is slumped and stiff. It looks clumsy, uncomfortable and out of balance. When this is the case, muscles simply contract to maintain a semblance of stability. Over time, some will tighten and shorten, whilst others weaken and stretch. Muscle imbalances impose strain on structures such as the joints, ligaments and tendons, which can then result in skeletal imbalances, asymmetrical and altered movement patterns, poor coordination, poor performance and even sprain and strain. Stiff muscles and general discomforts can understandably make the horse grumpy and, what in human terms could be described as irritable or short-tempered. This can affect his behaviour and general demeanour in the stable. Chronic poor posture, also affects general health. The natural movement and functioning of the thorax can become restricted. This means breathing becomes shallower, and so the intake of oxygen is reduced. Tension in certain muscles reduces circulation. Blood is unable to circulate around the muscle easily, reducing the delivery of oxygen, glucose and fuel to make energy, and also reducing the removal of toxins and waste products from the muscle. So what can be done? Many things, but the main focus and objective of this DVD is to apply the Pilates type principles to the horse. This can help to improve core control, balance, coordination, flexibility, stability, as well as posture. In order to evaluate the difference as the exercise program progresses, it is useful to stand back at the start and observe your horse's posture and the way he stands. However, before embarking on any exercise regime, it's well worth reviewing and understanding basic anatomical concepts. The horse's spine is much lower than many people realise, and it's not as flexible as our own spines. Most of the movement occurs within the horse's neck, but within the back, which is made up of the thoracic and the lumbar vertebrae, the horse only uses 1 to 2 degrees of movement. It's common to get soreness and tension in this area. That's because there's very little movement between the lumbar vertebrae and no movement between the sacral vertebrae. However, this is the point within the horse's spine where there's most movement, if we exclude the movement in the neck and if we exclude the horse's tail where there's considerable movement. That's because this is a hinge joint. The pelvis attaches onto the sacrum at the sacroiliac joint. There's virtually no movement at this joint. So it's the flexion and extension of the lumbosacral junction which really allows the horse to bring his hindquarters further underneath his body when he's cantering, when he's galloping, when he's jumping, bucking, rearing, at high levels of dressage when the horse is really engaged and collected behind. And the most extreme example would be the sliding western halt. It's well recognised that there are curves to the human skeleton and that we can alter the curvature of our spine by altering our posture, and that good posture helps us to perform most effectively and at our best, helps us to reduce the risk of injury. Poor posture not only reduces our ability to perform at our best, but also increases the risk of us getting aches and pains. And also, if poor posture is maintained over a long period of time, more chance of us getting serious arthritic and muscular problems. This is also true for the horse's spine. When the horse is standing at rest, there are natural curves. The neck is shaped in a slight S shape, while the thoracic and lumbar section of the spine is straight or ever so slightly curved upwards. We then saw the difference between the lumbar and the sacral regions of the spine, and then the tail vertebrae curved down towards the end of the dock. One of the most common poor postural positions in the horse is for this thoraco-lumbar section of the horse's spine, the curvature to become inverted. So that's when the horse's back will be dropping down like so. When the horse is stood at rest, the thoracic section of the horse's spine should be straight or ever so slightly curved upwards. If the horse has a poor posture in this region and the back hollows, this section of the spine, the curvature will become slightly inverted, and so the back will go down. The spinous processes come closer together. Because the horse's pelvis is attached onto the sacrum, the positioning of the horse's back and the posture of the horse's back can affect the positioning of the horse's pelvis. And this is something that we can feel within our own back and pelvis. If we tilt our pelvis forward, we can feel our back hollowing, our spinous processes in the lumbar region coming closer together. If we tilt our pelvis the other way, it will cause our back to round, and so the spinous processes in the lumbar vertebrae will open out, and this becomes more comfortable. Understanding the structures that support and maintain back posture is the first key to helping us to ride and train to prevent poor posture and resultant problems. On Henry, I've painted the nuchal ligament on in red. First of all, there's the cord-like part of the nuchal ligament, which runs from the poll along the top of the horse's neck to the withers. This is called the funicular part of the nuchal ligament. There are then finger-like projections which come down from the funicular part of the nuchal ligament and attach onto the lower cervical vertebrae. The nuchal ligament does continue at the top of the horse's withers, becoming the supraspinous ligament. It runs along the top of the spinous processes in the thoracic, lumbar and sacral regions of the horse's spine. The continuous nature of the nuchal and supraspinous ligament means that the positioning of the head and neck can affect the positioning of the back. When the horse raises his head up, the nuchal ligament goes slack, and so the supraspinous ligament goes slack. This means that the back goes down, the back hollows. This is a poor posture, which inhibits back movement, reduces spatial awareness and means that the muscles and skeleton can't work properly. Here the horse is in a high outline. His nose is still on the vertical, but he is still hollowing. He is hollowing in his back. When the horse brings his head and neck down, just as if he was eating off the floor, the nuchal ligament is pulled taut, the supraspinous ligament is pulled taut, which pulls on the spinous processes of the withers in the thoracic region, which helps to lift the back up. The back coming up is through no extra muscular effort, purely through the alignment of the ligaments in the neck and the back. This is a good posture for the horse's back and helps to illustrate why it's so important to feed the horse off the floor. Feeding off the floor is healthier for the respiratory and digestive systems. We've already seen how positioning of the head and neck can affect the back, but the reverse is also true. So positioning of the back can affect positioning of the head. By doing this reflex here, watch how his head comes down as I do the reflex. Understanding the anatomy and biomechanics of the neck and the back and the relationship between the two is so useful for us as riders and trainers, so that we can help the horse to go with a good back posture and to help reduce the risk of back problems. There are over 700 skeletal muscles in the horse's body, which create and control movement. The superficial muscles are large and powerful, particularly in the region of the hindquarters. They provide the powerhouse for all the big gymnastic movements essential for dressage, jumping and galloping. Beneath the superficial muscles are the deep muscles, and these tend to be much smaller because they are so much closer to the joints and have a far greater influence on stabilising and supporting the skeleton. The entire muscular system is encased and connected by fascia. The implication for this is that if there is pain or discomfort anywhere within the muscular system, it is quite possible and common for the effects to be felt elsewhere. It's the core muscles we're trying to influence for posture and stability. I've divided these into 4 groups. Firstly, the deep vertebral muscles. These are situated very close to the horse's spine. They're really very, very small muscles and attach each vertebrae to several of their neighbours. They work to stabilise the horse's spine. They also have a lot of nerve endings in them, which makes them very sensitive to any alterations in the vertebral alignment. and they're really important for posture. If there's any pain or problem within the horse's back, these deep vertebral muscles tend to atrophy, they tend to shrink. And so the really big muscles of the horse's back, which are really designed to create large movements and extension of the horse's back, they take over the role of stabilising the spine, but they're not designed to do this. And so they tend to get tight and sore. This adds to the problem. Later, I'll show you some exercises to strengthen these deep vertebral muscles. There are three main muscles which help to support the horse's forehand. These include the ventral serrated muscle, which can be divided into two parts, the cervical ventral serrated, which comes from the top of the horse's scapula and attaches onto the lower cervical vertebrae. The thoracic ventral serrated comes from the underside of the scapula and attaches onto the first 8 ribs. Then we have the deep cranial pectoral muscle, or subclavian muscle, which comes from the front of the scapula, runs down and attaches onto the horse's sternum. And finally, the ascending pectoral, which comes from the sternum and attaches onto the inside of the humerus and the bottom of the scapula. When these three muscles contract, they can lift up the thorax in between the two pillars of the front limbs, making the horse seem taller. So these muscles are really important for posture. And in fact, perhaps young horses or weak horses, when they first come into work, as these muscles become more toned, can appear to grow in height. The attachment of the forelimb to the rest of the horse's body via the thoracic sling group of muscles is very important, and it also helps to define the function and movement available within the horse's forelimb. The abdominal muscles work in opposition to the horse's back muscles. The internal and external abdominal oblique muscles are important in helping the horse to bend. The transverse abdominis acts rather like a thick belt supporting the horse's abdomen. The rectus abdomini, which runs from the horse's sternum and attaches up onto the inside of the pelvis, would actually be in this location on the midline here, but I've painted it on the side so you can see it. When all these muscles contract, it increases the pressure within the abdomen, which presses up on the underside of the thoracic and the lumbar vertebrae, which helps the back to raise. Another function of the abdominal muscles is to help support the internal organs and help create movement of the ribs. In trot, the moment of suspension increases the amount of bounce, so the back and the abdominal muscles work together to help stabilise the spine and reduce the amount of flexion and extension. The hip flexor and pelvic stabiliser muscles include the iliopsoas muscle group. These are really deep within the horse's body. The same as in us, they attach from the underside of the lumbar vertebrae and run to the underside and inside of the pelvis and the underside and inside of the top of the horse's hip joint. They help to create flexion within the horse's hip and also flexion within the lumbosacral junction. They're really important for the stability of the pelvic region. When working with high levels of engagement and collection, the hip flexors and stabilisers work in a shortened fashion to maintain flexion in the haunches. This type of work itself strengthens and tones these muscles, thereby helping to improve posture generally. Other hip and pelvic stabiliser muscles include the piriformis, the deep gluteal muscles and the adductors. The hip and pelvic stabiliser muscles are important for tight turns, pirouettes and balance, as well as engagement. Using exercises to strengthen these muscles will help to improve core stability. If the core muscles are well toned, the horse should be able to maintain a better posture for longer. The training scales will be easier to achieve. Expression can develop. Accuracy, confidence and agility will improve. A strong core also means a more comfortable body and a more amenable disposition. One of the best ways to become flexible and comfortable is to stretch. This is because the muscle fibres themselves become longer, which makes them more supple, increasing range of movement, reducing tension and soreness. This reduces the strain on the joints, tendons and ligaments and helps to reduce the risk of injury. Passive stretching and movements enhance circulation and lymph flow, particularly if the horse is on box rest. One of the less considered aspects of stretching is how it affects the nervous system. There are millions of nerve receptors within the body which affect the control the horse has over his muscles and coordination, and makes him more aware of where he is putting his feet. Stretching can increase body awareness, otherwise known as proprioception. A horse with a lesser degree of body awareness may well be less expressive and confident in his movement, less sure-footed and even clumsy. There are two main ways of stretching. Passive stretching requires no muscular effort on the part of the horse. To be able to relax into the stretch and gain the most benefit from it, he needs to be totally confident in the handler. Active stretching requires the horse to move his own body and create the stretch himself. They happen when the horse is being ridden or when performing groundwork exercises, often encouraged by the use of carrots. Pilates type exercises for horses include both types of stretching. These are just some of the general core strengthening and active stretching exercises, and I've chosen these because they give the maximum benefit to the maximum number of horses. These all help maintain a healthy musculoskeletal system, improve posture, performance and lessen the risk of injury. Using carrots to take the horse's head down in between his front legs uses the mechanics of the nuchal ligament to affect his back and also encourages him to strengthen his abdominal muscles. Use 2 carrots. Use the first to encourage him to bring his head down, and then the second to encourage him to bring his head back in between his front legs. Keep the carrots close to his lips. This way you'll be able to maintain the stretch for a longer period of time. Some horses may bend a front knee to try and cheat, but as long as they're still flexing up through their backs, this doesn't really matter. Different horses show a different range of movement and amount of spinal flexibility with this exercise. This horse is really rocking back on his hindquarters, recruiting those deep muscles under the pelvis, the iliopsoas and hip flexors, so it's really a good core strengthening exercise. And remember, the horse can't actually see the carrot when it's right down in between his front legs. Hold this position for 5 to 15 seconds. Of course it will vary from horse to horse, and do it 3 to 5 times. This exercise also helps to stretch the back muscles, which normally create extension within the spine. To appreciate the benefits of this exercise and to gain an idea of what the horse may be feeling, equivalent human Pilates exercises targeting similar muscle groups are sit-ups, the forward neck flexion stretch and this back stretch. This exercise really does stimulate the nervous system, which helps with control and body awareness.
Stretches top-line muscles of neck and back. Stimulates core muscles, including the thoracic sling, abdominal muscles, pelvic and hip flexors. Affects the deep vertebral muscles. Mobilizes vertebrae joints. Always keep the carrot touching the lips. Keep the carrot as low as possible. Aim to hold the position for 5 to 10 seconds. Repeat each position 3 or 4 times. Perform when the horse is warm. Perform on a secure surface.
This exercise is really good for promoting bend, spinal flexibility, as well as strengthening the horse's core. To do this, stand with your back touching his ribs, take hold of the head collar and encourage him to bring his head low to the side, below your far knee. Again, keep the carrot close to hold the position for as long as possible. Standing in this position, make sure you bring the horse's head out and then round and down, which gives a much better stretch. The human equivalents for this exercise are the lateral stomach crunches and these side stretches.
Affects muscles and joints involved in creating bend. Particularly recruits abdominal oblique muscles. Stimulates core muscles. Mobilizes vertebral and rib joints. Challenges balance. Improves spatial awareness and proprioception. Always keep the carrot touching the lips. Aim to hold the position for 5 to 10 seconds. Repeat each position 3 or 4 times. Perform when the horse is warm. Perform on a secure surface. Stand with your back touching the horse's ribs. Take the carrot to below your far knee.
This exercise helps stretch the small muscles around the poll. These sometimes get tense, particularly if the horse works in a tight neck outline or if he's been tied up, had a fright and pulled back against the head collar. Keep the carrot close to the horse's lips to get a small amount of flexion and also slightly to the side to get lateral flexion. This exercise is quite subtle as there's only a small amount of movement in the poll area, but it is very effective. To affect the muscles within the mid-neck, we want to bring the horse's head further round. This exercise is good for horses that tend to get fixed in one neck outline when we work them. It's good for promoting lateral suppleness of the horse's neck. This exercise is equivalent to this lateral neck stretch. Lateral stretches of the horse's neck can also be performed when the horse is ridden. To affect the base of the horse's neck, there's 2 really good stretches. The first, place your hand on his shoulder and use the carrot in the other hand to bring his head out low to the side, but keep pressing on his shoulder with the opposite hand. This is a really good stretch for the whole of the side of his neck. It's good to do this exercise against the wall so that he doesn't swing his quarters round in the attempt to reach the carrot. The other way of stretching the base of the horse's neck is to bring the carrot low to the side. Try and hold this for 5 to 15 seconds. This is like this neck stretch. Some people encourage the horse to bring his neck right round to the side and up high. This gives a good stretch within the neck, but encourages the back to extend, which is poor posture for the horse's back.
Stretches muscles involved in allowing bend in the neck. Mobilises cervical vertebrae joints. Improves lateral suppleness. Always keep the carrot touching the lips. Aim to hold the position for 5 to 10 seconds. Repeat each position 3 or 4 times. Perform when the horse is warm. Perform on a secure surface.
This neck extension stretch is really good for horses that tend to get quite tight in the neck. It's important to do it over an obstacle which is at approximately sternum level, and then take the carrot out at about level with the horse's sternum, so we get full extension of the horse's neck. This is similar to the neck extension stretch.
Stretches neck muscles. Stimulates thoracic sling muscles. Encourages elongation of the neck. Always keep the carrot touching the lips. Aim to hold the position for 5 to 10 seconds. Repeat each position 3 or 4 times. Perform when the horse is warm. Perform over an obstacle at sternum height. Keep carrot level with the horse's sternum.
The back lift exercise is really good for strengthening the horse's abdominal muscles, hip flexors, and stretching his back muscles. To do this exercise, firstly, make sure the horse knows where you are. And if your horse kicks, don't even try this exercise. Make an L shape with your thumb and your finger. Place your thumbs either side at the top of the tail and lay your hands on, pointing towards his false hip. When you take your thumbs out, your fingers are then in the correct position to scratch and create the reflex, create the movement. If your horse is particularly well conditioned over this area or has a very thick coat, you need to go against the direction of the hair to create the reaction. If you go with the hair quite often, you won't get that reaction. This exercise is easy to do, so it's easy to fit into your daily routine. Try and do it as often as possible, whenever you're grooming him, tacking him up. Whenever you walk past his hindquarters, you can easily do this exercise. With this exercise, different horses show a different range of movement. Sometimes the horse will want to step forward with the hind leg. This is because this back lift really recruits the hip flexor muscles. If you don't know the horse, stand by his side to do this exercise. These are equivalent abdominal strengthening exercises in a person. and these stretch similar back muscles. This exercise is the same as the back lift, but we only scratch on one side at a time. It helps to strengthen the internal and external abdominal oblique muscles on one side and stretch the back muscles on the other side. It's really good for promoting spinal flexibility and lateral bend. This is an equivalent human exercise.
Stretches back muscles, mobilizes vertebral joints, stimulates deep vertebral muscles, stimulates core muscles, including abdominal muscles, pelvic and hip flexors. Do not attempt these movements if your horse kicks. Make sure the horse knows where you are first. Gently stroke the area before asking for the movement. Fit these exercises into your daily routine. Aim to encourage the horse to hold a position for up to 5 seconds. Repeat 4 to 6 times a day.
This exercise helps strengthen the horse's abdominal muscles as well as the thoracic sling, those muscles involved in keeping the forehand light. These muscles are really important in stabilising the thorax and back during movement, supporting correct posture, raising the back in engagement, and also helping to carry the weight of the rider. It relies on a natural reflex. To do this exercise, firstly, gently stroke the horse's sternum so that they know you're there. Then, place your fingers in a line and press up to create the reaction. You should see the abdominal muscles contracting and the horse growing in height as they lift up the thorax between the withers. This exercise is very simple to do, so it's easy to fit into your daily routine whenever you're grooming or tacking up. However, if your horse doesn't like being girthed up or touched in this area, avoid doing this exercise. For a person to stretch and strengthen their abdominal and shoulder muscles, they could do these exercises.
Stimulates thoracic sling muscles. Stimulates abdominal muscles. Stimulates structures involved in raising the forehand. Do not attempt these movements if your horse bites or dislikes being girthed. Make sure the horse knows where you are first. Gently stroke the area before asking for the movement. Fit these exercises into your daily routine. Repeat 4 to 6 times a day.
Backing up is a really good exercise for strengthening the core muscles and those involved in engagement. He will show a very different posture in through his back and through his hindquarters compared to when he was walking forwards. When the horse goes backwards, you should see his back come up and more flexion within his lumbosacral junction, hip and hindquarter joints. To do this exercise effectively, it's really important to make sure the horse's head is low and he takes long marching steps backwards. He really needs to do a minimum of 10 steps back to get into the rhythm and to really help strengthen those muscles. It's really important to take time to teach your horse to go backwards, as taking short, shuffling steps back with the head high in the air with a hollow back posture isn't effective at strengthening the core muscles. To fit this into your daily routine, try walking in backwards on the way to the field. Backing up on a slope is a really good way of increasing the intensity of this exercise, making the core muscles work much harder. These exercises stretch and strengthen similar muscles to backing up in the horse.
Stimulates all 4 groups of core muscles, creates flexion within the spine and lumbosacral junction, stretches top-line extensor muscles of the back, strengthens muscles involved in protraction and engagement. Teach your horse to respect a voice aid to back up. Encourage him to keep his head down. Long marching steps backwards. Minimum of 10 steps back each day. Fit into a routine, for example, next to a fence line on the way to and from the field.
Walking over a raised pole is a really good exercise for developing the muscles involved in creating expression. Walking, as opposed to trotting or cantering, means that the horse is using his muscles rather than relying on bounce or momentum to get over the pole. Walking over the raised pole makes the horse use his core muscles for balance and stability, rather like us standing on one leg. Ideally, the pole wants to be at knee hock height. And in terms of repetitions, if we can set something up on the way to the field, we can do this at least twice a day. Also, be imaginative. Walk over logs, fallen branches or long grass to get the same effect when you're out hacking. Walking over an object also stimulates the peripheral nervous system and helps develop proprioception, particularly good for young horses. Several randomly placed poles improves the horse's adjustability and reactions, and several in a line increases the demand.
Stimulates and strengthens core muscles. Develops balance. Improves coordination. Stimulates muscles involved in creating expression. Make the pole approximately knee hock height. Use alternative obstacles when hacking. Put an obstacle on the way to the field.
This exercise is really good to affect the muscles involved in creating bend. It stimulates the internal and external abdominal oblique muscles. Walk on. The thoracic sling muscles, the deep vertebral muscles, and the adductors and the abductors as the horse steps around on the circle. When you're doing this exercise, make sure you stand in the same place and make the horse go around you. Be careful not to step back so that you can then make sure the horse keeps stepping forwards on the circle. Walk on, Freddie. Walk on. It is not until we turn the horse in a really small circle that we begin to see bend through his back. On this 8-metre circle, there is very little lateral movement through the back. It is not until Henry is on this really small circle that we see any bend through his back. Also, note the amount of adduction and abduction of the fore and hind limbs, the movement of the ribs. The ribs get closer together on the inside of the bend and wider apart on the outside. Also, the whole barrel of the ribs swings to the outside of the circle. The movement of the ribs plays an important part in creating bend through the horse's body and gives the feeling of bending around the rider's inside leg.
Stimulates muscles involved in creating bend. Stimulates muscles involved in creating lateral work. Stimulates core muscles. Particularly stimulates abdominal oblique and adductor muscles. Pivot on the spot and make sure the horse walks around you. Maintain the forebeat of the walk. Time your aids for maximum effect. Perform 3 circles each way each day.
Another good exercise for stimulating the pelvic and hip stabilizer muscles is to pick up the horse's hind leg and then challenge the balance. Rather like us standing on one leg, recruiting our core muscles for balance. So, good boy Freddie, pick up the hind limb, this one. First of all, make sure he's relaxed and comfortable, and then gently just push and release, push and release. And this is just challenging those muscles, challenging the balance with his off 4.
Strengthens the pelvic and hind limb stabilizer muscles. Improves proprioception. Challenges the balance. Stimulates core muscles. Avoid doing if the horse kicks. Make sure the horse is relaxed. Perform on a non-slip surface.
This is the first of the passive stretches I'm going to show you. With these, it's really important to do them slowly. The forelimb protraction stretch is really good for stretching the muscles down the back of the forelimb and into his side. This helps the horse to develop range of movement, stride length and expression. To do this, pick the horse's front leg up. Just make sure he's relaxed and then slowly bring his leg out the front. Good boy. Now with this, it's important just to hold the leg in this position for 5 to 15 seconds and just to allow him to relax into the stretch rather than pulling to try and create it. To increase the intensity of the stretch, take the leg round to the side by about 10 degrees and you should see the stretch increasing into his side, and also by 10 degrees the other direction. This increases the stretch through the pectoral muscles and influences the thoracic sling group of muscles involved in supporting the forehand. You will also find you get a better range of movement if you do this exercise after the horse has worked. Good boy. These arm and shoulder exercises stretch similar muscles to the forelimb protraction stretch in the horse.
Moves and stretches muscles involved in creating reach and expression with front leg. Mobilizes forelimb joints. Stimulates thoracic sling muscles. Challenges balance. Make sure the horse is warm before stretching. Create the movement slowly and gradually. Give the horse the opportunity to stretch rather than pulling or forcing it. Hold stretch for 3 to 10 seconds. Perform on a non-slip surface.
The forelimb retraction stretch is really good to stretch the muscles down the front of the horse's shoulder. There are two ways of doing this exercise. The first way, pick the horse's foot up, hold it standing facing forwards, one hand above the fetlock and one hand above the knee, and then just gently pull the leg back until the forearm is approximately vertical. You can hold this exercise again for 5 to 15 seconds. To increase the intensity of this stretch, encourage the horse to bring his head round to the other side. This increases the stretch down the front of his shoulder and in the base of his neck. The second way of doing this stretch is to pick the foot up, hold onto the foot with one hand, the withers with the other, and use your leg to create the stretch. So you're using your body weight rather than your arm strength. Again, hold for 5 to 15 seconds and then release. Good boy. These exercises stretch similar muscles to the forelimb retraction stretch in the horse.
Moves and stretches muscles in front of shoulder and forelimb. Mobilises forelimb joints. Stimulates thoracic sling muscles. Challenges balance. Make sure the horse is warm before stretching. Create the movement slowly and gradually. Give the horse the opportunity to stretch rather than pulling or forcing it. Hold the stretch for 3 to 10 seconds. Perform on a non-slip surface.
The hind limb protraction stretch is really good for stretching the hamstring muscles down the back of the leg. You want to avoid doing this if your horse kicks, and there are two ways of doing it. The first way, pick the horse's foot up, make sure the horse is relaxed, and then just gradually encourage the horse to bring the leg forwards. Again, just hold the foot in the position and allow them to stretch into it rather than pulling for the stretch. You want the foot to be aiming for the pastern of the forefoot. Hold for about 5 to 15 seconds and then relax the leg down. The second way of doing this exercise, pick the horse's foot up again, hold the leg, allow them to relax, then stand and face the horse with your legs apart. Place your head against the ribs so you've got a good, secure position to start from. Use your other hand above the hock and gently just encourage the stretch. Again, hold the position rather than pulling it to allow the horse to stretch into it. Good man. To increase the intensity of this stretch, we can encourage the horse to take the head down at the same time. This will bring the stretch further up into the horse's hindquarters. This exercise is really good for young horses to help them develop proprioception. This is the human version of the hamstring stretches.
Moves and stretches hamstring muscles and those down the back of the hind leg. Mobilises hind limb joints. Challenges balance. Make sure the horse is warm before stretching. Create the movement slowly and gradually. Give the horse the opportunity to stretch rather than pulling or forcing it. Hold the stretch for 3 to 10 seconds. Perform on a non-slip surface.
The aim of this exercise is to stretch the whole spine. Firstly, make sure the horse knows where you are. Then pick up the horse's tail and just gradually lean back on it so you've got your whole weight. At the same time, ask somebody to encourage his head forwards and down. If you're on your own and you haven't got someone to help, just put some carrots on the floor or let him eat off the floor. This is good for horses that clamp their tail and show tension in their tail, as this can be an indicator of problems further forward in the spine. It stretches the muscles within the tail and those within the horse's sacrum. Okay. Okay.
2 seconds. That's good.
It's good to hold the tail in this position for about 30 seconds before releasing. Good boy. We can stretch our spines like this.
Moves and stretches through whole spine. Particularly affects spinal muscles in the tail and hindquarters. Mobilises spinal joints. Challenges balance. Gradually load your weight onto the horse's tail. Get your feet well underneath your hands. Use your body weight rather than arm strength. Encourage the horse to reach forwards and down with head. Create the movement slowly and gradually. Hold for up to 30 seconds. Perform on a non-slip surface. Do not perform if your horse kicks.
Oh boy. Passive movements maintain mobility within the joints, tendons, ligaments and muscles, as well as promoting production of joint fluid. They're good for horses on box rest as well as those in work. Spending some time with your horse in this way will also give him some company and help alleviate boredom. This exercise is really good for creating movement in this area of the back. It stimulates the deep vertebral muscles. It's very subtle but effective. To do this exercise, find and place your hands on the last few ribs and then gently press and release to get a little bit of movement through the horse's ribs. As they relax into it, you can really see the movement through the back and the whole body rocking in reaction to the movement. Try and get into a rhythm and try and use your body weight rather than your upper arm strength. This exercise is very subtle but effective. To increase the intensity of this exercise, pick up the horse's tail, make sure the horse knows you're there first. Gently just take it out the back to encourage them to relax a little bit first before bringing the tail around to the side. Take a good hold of the tail with one hand, place your other hand on the last few ribs and then gently push with your left hand and pull with your right hand to create the lateral movement through the horse's back. So push and pull and release. Push and pull at the same time. This still gets the movement through the horse's ribs, but also we get a little bit more lateral movement through the horse's spine. And you can see the whole horse rocking in response to this exercise. Once they're used to it, most horses really enjoy it and find it quite relaxing. It's a good idea to do about 10 repetitions on each side.
Mobilises thoracic, vertebral and rib joints. Stimulates the deep vertebral joints. Improves back suppleness and flexibility. Stroke the ribs before starting. Maintain a rhythm. Start with only light pressure, gradually increase as the horse accepts the movement. Perform 10 times on each side each day.
This exercise is good for mobilising the joints between the tail vertebrae and moving the deep vertebral muscles within the tail and the sacral vertebrae. It encourages the horse to relax and is good for horses that habitually clamp their tail. Pulling the tail side to side helps to create some lateral movement through the horse's back. It also helps to strengthen the muscles down the side of the horse's hindquarters, the lateral stabilisers of the horse's hip. To do this exercise, firstly make sure the horse knows where you are and avoid doing it if your horse kicks. Pick up his tail and gently lean back on it to give him the opportunity to relax and get used to the pressure. Then walk around to the side and stand so you're facing his false hip. Then gently pull and release to create the lateral movement. It's usual for the horse to want to move his hind legs to start off with. Pull and release about 10 times and you should see the lateral movement through his spine, and you can also see the lateral stabilisers of the hind limb bracing against the pull. Then come out the back and just hold it there for a couple of seconds before going round to the other side and repeating the pulls this way. It's a good idea to try and get into a rhythm with it and to use your body weight rather than your upper arm strength. Finally, just come out the back, lean on his tail just to encourage him to stretch and to straighten his spine to finish. We obviously can't pull our tail to move our spine and strengthen our pelvic muscles, but these exercises have a similar effect.
Mobilises joints through the back and pelvic region. Stimulates the hind limb lateral stabiliser muscles. Challenges balance and recruits core muscles. Start gently and gradually increase. Aim for about 10 pulls each way. Get into a rhythm and maintain a contact. Stretch tail out and back before and after. Perform on a non-slip surface.
To do this exercise, firstly pick the horse's foot up, hold the leg securely to give him confidence, and make sure you don't twist the horse's knee. Gradually circle the horse's leg, making the circles bigger. This moves the pectoral muscles, the thoracic sling muscles, and also stimulates the muscle on the other leg as his balance is challenged. Good boy. Taking the leg side to side also affects the joints of the upper limb.
Mobilizes shoulder and elbow joints. Stimulates thoracic sling muscles. Moves muscles involved in creating reach, lateral movement and expression with front leg. Create the movement slowly and gradually. Keep within the normal range of movement. Perform on a non-slip surface.
This exercise stimulates the muscles that moves the carpus. This one. Pick the horse's leg up, holding it above the fetlock, and then gently flex and extend the horse's carpus. This stimulates the production of joint fluid, which lubricates the joint. As a general guide, repeat this movement about 10 times.
Mobilizes carpal joints. Stimulates thoracic sling muscles. Moves muscles involved in creating flexion and extension of the carpus. Create the movement slowly and gradually. Keep within the normal range of movement. Perform on a non-slip surface.
To move the horse's fetlock joint, just gently flex and extend it. It takes a ton of pressure to fully extend the fetlock, so we really are only working within the mid-range. Also, we can hold onto the foot and just very gently twist it to stimulate movement within the pastern joints.
Mobilizes fetlock and pastern joints. Stimulates thoracic sling muscles. Moves muscles and tendons involved in creating flexion and extension of fetlock and pastern joints. Create the movement slowly and gradually. Keep within the normal range of movement. Perform on a non-slip surface.
I understand about the benefits of the stretches. Can I do any harm?
Do the stretches as I've shown you, but remember the horse is a really large animal with really large muscle mass. It'd be physically impossible for you to pull the forelimb and damage muscles.
And when's the best time to do the stretches?
If you do them after the horse has worked, you'll actually get a better range of movement. It helps to prevent the development of stiffness and tension within the muscles. If you do them before you work the horse, it can help loosen them up, ready to perform, but it's really important to make sure that they're warm before you do them.
But what about if I've got a horse on box rest?
Again, make sure the horse is warm first, but the active stretching and the core strengthening exercises and the passive movements are fine to do with horses on box rest.
Where's the best place to do the stretches?
Wherever you and your horse are most relaxed. But make sure you've got a good secure footing, either rubber matting on a bed or on a surface. Try and avoid concrete.
How do you know which are the right stretches for your horse?
The exercises that I've shown you are generally good for all horses, but to devise a specific programme for an individual horse, a good therapist will be able to do a muscular assessment, perhaps watch you ride, watch the horse move, and then identify which are the best exercises for your horse.
How often do you recommend I do the stretches?
Really, you want to try and do them every day, so fit them into your daily routine. For example, do the forelimb stretches when you pick his feet out, go backwards on the way to the field, walk over the raised pole on the way to the field, so it's easy to do. If you can't do them every day, try and aim for 5 or 6 times a week for the first 6 weeks, and then 3 to 4 times a week once the routine has been established.
When should I expect to see a difference?
It really varies from horse to horse and depends on what work you've done with the horse before. But 2 to 3 weeks you should see a difference. It takes about 6 weeks to really consolidate the difference.
Are there any occasions I shouldn't do the stretches?
If the horse is injured, ask your vet first. And just use your horse sense. Make sure that the environment's safe and the horse is relaxed and not agitated. Make sure you're fit enough to do it yourself and that you don't have any aches and pains that you could aggravate.
If your horse is in pain, injured or recovering from injury, check with your vet or physiotherapist before commencing. Do not force movement where it doesn't come easily. Make sure the horse is warm before commencing passive stretches.
I hope you enjoy doing these exercises with your horse. Spending time with him should be a pleasure, and it's a great opportunity for bonding. It should also give you a happy, comfortable horse.